We are the stories we tell ourselves. And all a story is change happens and we give it meaning. Before I make a sweeping statement or a general statement of, as Black people, we're always tearing ourselves down.
Awekenge, this is Mental Metals, hosted by textWhat.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mental Matters. I'm your host, textWhat. And before we dive into today's incredible conversation, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy what you hear today, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also helps others discover the valuable insights we share every week. And if you find today's episode particularly inspiring or insightful, don't forget to share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think could benefit from it. Thank you for your support. It truly means the world to us. Now, let's get back into our conversation. I read the poem actually, and also thank you so much for bringing out the thing about poetry. The reason why I started doing poetry is the fact that I dealt with some mental health issues, depression and anxiety. So I ran towards writing. And as I was writing, I realized that in a way, going back to your poem, I read it, and in a way, it's something that I would give my younger self, someone who was in that stage of not knowing what to do, of not knowing how to feel what is mental health, why I am feeling this way. So for that, thank you so much for it brings a lot of hope. It encourages one to not give up. It gives one to have that sense of want to live, since as you spoke about suicide on your message, suicide gives that thing. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate you for sending me the poem.
You know, Aseko, I have my book of poetry here, the book that I wrote, but I've been writing my whole life. And hearing you speak, you just reminded me of something. Someone said writing is organized thinking. So when you put it on the paper, you organize your thoughts and it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
One of the problems with mental health, not problems, but one of the problems is there's no congruent line. It means the ideas don't connect themselves. There's no, the experiences in our past don't connect to the present, and we can't see the future. And that's why we feel crazy, some people say, or that's why we feel clouded, right? But when you write, you're organizing your thoughts and your emotions, and you're saying, it can mean this, or it can mean this, or it can mean this. And what you're doing is you're processing your experience. And when you can process your experience from the inside out, that's why writing is so beneficial towards our mental health. And so that's the first idea, no?
Yes.
The second idea, the same way we process in writing, we're processing in our speech and our conversation now. This is why communication is important, and that's why finding people who you vibe with is important. You sharing with me your experience of my poem that I wrote about my students, that I wrote about my experience with my friend committed suicide, so on, you know? So now we're all talking about it, and we're all saying, oh yeah, this is a shared human experience. And now we're all processing together. I processed here, and I processed here, and now it makes sense, or I get a better perspective of it. That's why writing is good. That's why sharing our writing is good. And that's why we talk about what we write.
One thing about writing and also sharing is, as also a black person, is the fact that writing is around the stigma of writing, not writing per se, but mental health as a whole, of not knowing, or actually not know, not say, not knowing, not actually not knowing the resources of what should I do when I feel like this? How can I cope towards this thing? And I feel like that's where I start, as I mentioned it, I started writing. Would you say that on your side, you had an intensive information when it came to mental health, and how did you recognize it?
Um, First of all, have we started? Because I'm okay if we started.
I think we have started. We have started. The time that I started recording, we started.
No worries, no worries. Beautiful. Where are you now? May I ask?
I'm in South Africa.
Hey, what part of South Africa?
George. But I doubt you will know it.
Jordan, George?
George. It's just George.
No. Just George? No. Every time I have many South African friends, and every time I worked with them in Korea, and people always thought I was from South Africa when they would meet me.
You look South African, actually. Just to mention that, you look South African. Serious. I'm serious.
Like yeah, like I was a KP, you know. And I would always sing with them that sure shallow the gumboots and everything. Yeah, man. No, I know South Africa. No, I know. And Bunny Chow, yeah. So, you said where, to your question now, you said in regards to mental health,
Yeah.
and my writing. Can you ask the question again, please?
As I mentioned that as Black people, we have this thing of not being able to cope towards mental health, of not knowing, most of us not knowing their resources. And sometimes we were raised by a generation that didn't even look upon mental health, generation that didn't have knowledge around mental health as a whole, mental difficulties. So would you say that through writing your book, writing poetry, let me just say poetry, would you say that you had that intense information about mental health? Hello? Did you hear my question?
Okay. Yeah, okay. I think I got the question. I'll say it again to you. You said, as Black people, we didn't have a generation before us who was informed about mental health.
Yeah.
And in writing my book, did I learn about mental health?
Yeah.
Or did I?
Before you wrote the book.
Okay. So I had an interesting upbringing, no?
Mm.
My mother is from the Philippines. My father is from the Bahamas. I was born in California, but I grew up in the Bahamas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also grew up with a sincere relationship with the creator, with the divine.
Mm.
Like religion was never a burden for me. Um, and our family had our problems. My father was divorced. He had his issues communicating and so on, which I'm not angry and I'm not mad at, right?
Yeah.
And the only reason I mention it is because our lives aren't perfect, no? And that's a good thing. What mental health is when you can look in your mind and your expectation of the world makes sense, like it matches.
Mm.
It's also when you can look in your past and you can look in your future and it is all connected and it makes sense. Think about it, right?
Mm.
I don't like the word crazy, but in the mind of the crazy person, the world seems sane. Like it makes sense.
Mm.
But we, when we have bad mental health or when there's not well-being, it's because our expectations don't match our reality or experience, right?
Mm.
Now, I said all that to say There's a book I used to collect. It's called Steps to Christ. And in it, it says prayer is a conversation with God, an intimate prayer, conversation with a friend. And I had a sincere prayer life. And I would talk um, in my prayers, and I used to freestyle like that. And that's actually how I wrote the poetry.
Mm.
That's how I would write the poetry. It was conversations with God, quite literally. And that's always been with me since I was a young person. So my mental health was having conversations with the divine. Now, where I am now, my worldviews have changed. I have different ideas. And the truth is, I see the divine in you. I see the divine in me. That's who I talk to. That's who I interact with. That's who I, and this is my worldview. Yeah. This is how I see the world. And it helps the world make sense for me.
Mm.
Yeah. And I hear you say as Black people, like we have our, we have our stressors. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we have our unique experience. We have our unique experience. I'll say like that. But we're also all having a human experience. And writing, your mind, your access is always with you, man. Mental health. I don't live in the stories of other people. I've had people treat me a certain way, act a certain way, do certain things of all colors, all shades, same color as me, darker than me, brighter than me. And I think because I know who I am, there's this poem I have for you called I Am. I could say it later. But because I know who I am, that's where my confidence was. And that has greatly helped my mental health.
Mm. You mentioned that when you wrote poetry, firstly it was conversation between you and God. I feel like I relate on that because on my poetry book I have a section where it's me. In a way, I wouldn't say that it's just writing. I would just say that our prayers I'm having. It's a prayer. It's a section of prayer, whereas I talk to God in terms of I don't mind the thing of no, this book will be read by other person. I just have that thing of knowing, no, I am writing this poem and I'm talking with God in this. And I feel like that's where, in a way, I found a little bit of healing. But what actually contributed to my bit of healing, my healing is this podcast, because this podcast really helped me in a way of experiencing different circles in terms of mental well-being. And at first, I didn't even know mental well-being. I didn't even know what I only knew anxiety and depression. That's all. I thought that's mental health. Or
Hey, watch this.
yeah,
You can't be what you can't see, and that's all you knew. And now it opened you up to something new. Go on.
and in a way, my I had this thing of wanting to learn more, and I started learning about bipolar. I first started learning about bipolar, autism, and these different spectrums of mental health. And I would like to go back to the thing that you said about knowing who you are. And as I was listening you of talking, I feel like you had some confidence in a way of you didn't allow people to, in a way, discourage you in something that you do. And I feel like, as I will use this word again, as Black people, we have this tendency of just destroying each other, not wanting to each other to learn things. We are not open-minded. And would you say that religion is part
Go
of
on.
your healing?
Was religion a part of my healing?
Yes.
That's a beautiful question. I'm gonna open this window to be a part of my healing with this heat. Hold on 1 second.
Saying that
Hey. I need some breeze healing right now. That's what I need.
Yeah. I can quite see that you are sweating.
Hey, I'm in the Bahamas now. That's why.
Is it that hot?
So yes, it's that hot. Winter is coming now in South Africa, no?
Yeah. Favorite season.
Hey.
Yeah.
The question was religion part of my healing?
Was religion part of your healing?
Um, mm, okay, so many things to say here. Aseko. So first of all, I'll say we are the stories we tell ourselves. Huh? We
Yeah.
are the stories we tell ourselves. And all a story is change happens and we give it meaning.
Mm.
Before I make a sweeping statement or a general statement of, as Black people, we're always tearing ourselves down. I understand why you say that. And I find evidence of that at times. I also find evidence that people generally pull people down. And I surround myself with people who uplift me and I uplift them.
Mm.
Black, white, whatever. But I'm surrounded by Black people and I surround myself with Black people who uplift me and I try to uplift them. And there's one thing, right?
Mm.
If you can't change the people you're around, change the people you're around, right? Because we are the stories we tell ourselves. Again, now to religion, did it save me? I would say this. Because of my spiritual practice as a young man, my sincere spiritual practice, and what that was relationships. That protected me as I grew up and as I went through the other stresses of life. Let me tell you a poem now, no?
Yeah.
You okay for that?
Yeah.
It's called I Am. It's called I Am. And it's about identity because all action comes from a space of identity. Tell me this. Can you hear the man doing cutting the grass outside?
No.
Okay. Because that's why the window was closed, but it's hot. It's called I Am. I Am. I am a messenger, sanctified to speak with a divine voice and know it was not of my own choice, rather. God's will be done because I am part of a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a special person used to proclaim the praise of him who called me out of darkness into the marvelous light. You see, I am the mic. And the Lord is my controller. So every time I step center stage, I'm representing for Jehovah with the Holy Spirit in the middle of my existence, reminding me I am blessed because of a gift that was heaven sent. See, I'm speaking about the Word, the Messiah, the Christ, who provided me with a new way to write, a new way to love, a new way to live. So I love to give back my life, lyric, and pen because he is the only one. He is the only son. He is why my life has so much meaning, and I am starting to see. This is the whole duty of man, to stand up and proclaim the praise of the one who claimed the highest name and told Moses, I am that I am. So of his love I will always write. And if you ask why, it's because I am made in his image. And although the race has fallen, still he is risen. So let me remember every time that I write. My pen moves in vain if it's not used to praise your name. If ink is not guided by your hands, my stanzas are worthless. If the verse does not speak of you, if they do not speak of your truth, my sentences hold no significance. So, Lord, let the meditations of my heart and the words of what I write be acceptable in thy sight, because in the end, I am nothing without you in my life. Now check it, right? I wrote that poem when I was 16 years old. So that's my goodness. That's over 20 some years ago, right?
Yeah.
And once you have a strong identity and you know who you are, and this is the thing, my identity has changed since that poem. Like there are things in that poem that don't necessarily align with what I believe, but it is rooted in me and it still resonates. It has meaning for me. Don't get me wrong. I say those words sincerely, but it means different things to me now. But I knew from a young age who I am. I am a messenger, sanctified to speak with a divine voice, and it was not of my own choice, rather, God's will be done. That is what kept me. Now, when I hear the word religion, religion just means going through actions, going through motions, doing things. That didn't necessarily keep me, but my relationship with divinity, with the collective whole, knowing that I am a part of it and that it is working in my favor as I'm working to help it, that is what kept me.
Mm, 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 mm. And it's quite. How can I put this? Like, I'm still processing the poem, actually.
Eh,
And also, speaking about identity, it's something that, in a way, also I had difficulties processing that per se, because as having having two different parents, which is my mother was Xhosa and which is my father wasn't,
Mhm.
which is I don't know him. That's the thing, and
Okay.
it's it's quite it's quite difficult because in our culture we always take our father's clan name, and I feel
Eh,
like that's the thing. I feel like being able to not knowing my roots, not knowing my own identity, really had an impact of my on my mental well-being. As you were you were doing the poem, I was stuck on asking myself who I am. I haven't
mm,
I haven't known myself in that full extent, but at the same time, I have taken decision that I will take my mother's clan name, and also it's one of the powerful clan names that I'm actually proud of it. And yeah, man. And also this conversation went a little in a different way. Actually, it went a
okay.
different way, but I love that. And these are
This
these are conversations that I want, being able to be a conversation, not I ask a question, you answer, but have the actual conversation of no, yeah, let's talk about this. For example, talk about mental health, and also with mental health, we were able to dive deeply on other conversations of identity and how identity can, in a way, affect your mental well-being, because it did affect my mental well-being, and in a way that I didn't like. And also I internalized things. I didn't talk about it per se. I didn't say nothing. I just went. I had those conversations in my mind of what should I do? What should I do in terms of who I am? And that's where I started learning from the friends that I made about culture. I learned about culture, these things, these different things. So yeah, as I've said, this conversation probably went the other way around. But
no man, the conversation went where it's supposed to go. Like a conversation, con means with, basare means to turn. Conversation means a turning with your thoughts. And wherever you want to go, we can go. That's perfectly fine.
mm,
I wanna look back of when we were talking about identity, eh?
yeah,
So um have you read Trevor Noah's Born a Crime?
I haven't actually.
You haven't, but you know the story. His mother was Zulu, no?
Yeah, I know the thing
And
so around
and
that.
his yeah, and his father was Dutch, and so he himself, um, he was mixed, and the reason I bring it up is because Like I told you, a story is change happens and we give it meaning.
Yeah.
The thing is, we get to choose the meaning. We get to choose the meaning. Now, change happens and other people try to put meaning on our story. You can't live in the stories of other people's heads.
Definitely.
Other people will try to tell stories and it's just like, no, that's not who I am. And that's why you get to tell the story, man. Because I can't speak into your life. I like your experience is your experience, and there's no greater privilege than to be who you are. But the fact that your father was not in the picture, you could rewrite that and say, okay, well, he gave me the chance to be who I need to be more fully. Or I don't know, because you get to choose what that means going forward. Um, the point I'm making is, while we can't change the past, we can change how we look at it and the meaning we give it.
Mm.
And we can take action in the present, no?
Yeah, definitely.
You can't take action in the past, but you can look at it different. You could take a new perspective of the past.
Mm.
And that said, I always believe our future is bigger than our present, because we're constantly expanding. And if our future is bigger than our present, the question is how? Like how? It's by, again, the stories we tell ourselves. We are the stories we tell ourselves.
Actually, the actual initial conversation was about 30 minutes. That's the thing. It's quite a short podcast, and also as much as I prepared this, and as I've said, that the conversation went in a way that I didn't think it will, but I feel
It's
like
all right.
the conversation, I really enjoyed the conversation, and definitely the audience definitely enjoyed it, because in a way of, we dive deeply into something that is very important, identity. And I feel like once you have, you don't know your identity at some point in our culture, like in our culture, when it comes to men, when you don't know your identity, you are classified as you're not man enough. That's a thing. It's a thing of culture. So
Mhm.
through this, and also you would be ashamed of saying some things. You'd be ashamed of having a say on cultural things when it comes to our nation as South Africa as a whole. So yeah, before I let you go, I have a last question.
Go on.
And we spoke about
Yeah.
culture. What questions do you have from listeners about mental health?
What questions do I have for the listeners about mental health?
Yeah.
What questions do I have for the listeners?
Yeah.
My question to you is the question of life. Well, yeah. One is, who are you? Yeah. After that, the next question is, what do you want? Because you're worthy of getting everything you want if you are supporting life. Life supports those who support life. Yeah.
Definitely.
So, who are you? What do you want? Next question is, can you get what you want? Because to be able to get what you want, you have to you either need to find support or you need to find skills. Yeah. So if you have something that you want, find the support and find the skills to do it. And it's there. Life supports those who support life. And the final thing is, if you know who you are, you know what you want, and you have the skills and support to do it, last question is just, will you do it? That's the only question you can answer. That's a question only you can answer. Will you do it? Yeah. Hey, the sound went out. I can't hear you well.
You can hear me?
Now I can hear you. Now I can hear
So
you.
I think I was too far from my. As I said, it's something that one should look to and realize that and go back and their roots and try by means with this month was the Heritage Month, African Month, whereas it's
I
you
can't.
can hear me
No.
now.
No, there's a lot of feedback. It's because
Can you hear me now?
it goes in and out. Yeah.
With the PC mic. Can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you better. Yeah.
I'm using the PC mic, but as I've said that as people we need to look at our roots and being able to know ourselves. What and as you someone that has found himself, has known himself to the full extent, and you know what I mean when you say know your roots and being able to know that I am who I am, and whatever, as you mentioned, as whatever someone says about me, I, as you said, change happens when we change happens. We give it meaning, and through someone telling you that you're not worth it, you won't succeed, is the fact that once you believe those words, you give that certain person power, and something that we should try by any means from running away from. We need to run away from that because it literally destroys our self-esteem, and that's where we found ourselves depressed, when we find ourselves anxious and not being able to fully accept ourselves, and we need validation from other people. So yeah, thank you so much for such an interesting conversation, and thank you so much in a way of helping me in terms of navigating this conversation, per se, into from poetry and it went to into identity. So thank you so much for that. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah. If I could tell one thing, and I see the time, don't worry.
it.
But
Okay, no problem.
no person steps into the same river twice. When you've taken when you've taken the second step, both the river and the person have changed. So when I say I know myself, I'm not the same person I was when I was 16.
Yeah.
I'm not the same person when I was 20, not the same person when I was 30. Like I'm changing every single day. I learned the skill though to talk with myself, to ask questions of myself, and to be comfortable with the answers. So you are going to change. The thing about mental health is the quality of your life is directly related to the quality of your communication. And if you can have good conversations with yourself while you're changing, the I am keeps on changing.
Yeah, definitely.
And just the way we look at it changes. Yeah, man. I'm wishing you all the best on this journey.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And as I've said, thank you so much for such an interesting conversation. A conversation that I believe that as African, it was African Month, as someone everyone needs to hear, and it's and yeah, man. Thank you so much for having this
Man.
conversation, and thank you so much for making your time for being here and being able to just reaching out in terms of this conversation, this